Hi, and thanks for joining me for this tutorial. I'm going to show you a quick demo on how you can easily create these line shadow effects on lettering or in illustration as well, really easily with a brush that I've created especially for this purpose. It's called Diagonal Shader, and it's part of a sample download you can get for free from the website. So there's a link below that you can find this brush if you want to follow along. It basically just paints diagonal lines, and it's really handy. It's kind of got a handmade feel to it, but it's really handy because if you tried to do this by hand yourself, getting the angle and the spacing consistent throughout the piece would just take a very long time, so it's definitely a time saver. So I'm going to jump into a new file here that I've prepared so I can show you step by step how we go about this. And I'll just change my brush here to a lettering brush, because what we're going to do is first create like a drop shadow of the text. So you may have done this before, but just in case, basically duplicate your first layer and slide it with 2 fingers to the right. Doing that means that now we can flood that layer with a color and it's not going to go outside of the text there. So if I turn off that top layer, you can see I've just made this a different color. So now we're going to select the arrow tool and we're going to move this sort of down so that there's quite a bit of body of the lettering coming outside of the text. So if you think of like the light source coming from the top left here, that's around about where your shadow would fall. Then using the lettering brush again, we're just going to fill in, but remembering that we've got our alpha lock on, so that's why my brush didn't work just then. So to turn that off, 2 fingers, swipe to the right. And then we fill in the areas that are, the gap. So you basically, when you get to somewhere like this where the lines are connected, just give them a connection line and fill in that space. So it sort of starts to make visual sense as you fill it in that that's becoming the shadow. And for bonus points, you also can sort of extend that shadow so that it's a little bit more as it would be. You don't want it to be too sharp of an angle. So just give that a graduated angle there. So I'll just speed this up so that you're not waiting around. Right, so to save a bit of time, I've also just created this one earlier. So we've got our our shadow for textured toolkit lettering nicely made. And now we want to just create a little gap between the lettering itself and the shadow. And to do this, rather than using your eraser and kind of coming in and doing it by hand, a really quick and easy way is to just duplicate that top layer again. We're going through the same method as before by alpha locking, and this time I'm going to use a contrasting color just so I can see it clearly. So I'll use this blue here, and now we fill this layer. And I'm just going to nudge it. And if you want to move in Procreate in small increments, you can just, as long as you've got your arrow tool selected and you see the bounding box around the object, you can just nudge it by tapping the canvas in the direction you'd like it to go. So once that's kind of a nice amount, so we've still got a good amount of shadow, but we've got a nice obvious gap. Go to open your menu and choose select. And this has now selected that layer. And now we move back to our shadow. I'm going to hide the layer that we're selected. I'm on my shadow layer. And now I'm going to tap on that to reveal the menu and press clear. And so now we have this gap that's been created from the shadow layer. And to clean it up, there are, you'll notice, some areas where it's not a clean cut and we don't want any bits overhanging on the other side of the clear gap. So just manually get on your eraser tool and just manually kind of edit that so that it's nice and clean. Right, so once you've done that, we just noticed a little bit more, especially between the letters. It'll look a lot better if there's a clearance there. Okay, so next, same again, we want to select the shadow layer. So I'm on this orange shadow layer and I've just tapped it and chosen select. I want to now create a new layer. I'm going to choose the color that the lettering is in, which is this sort of dark chocolatey brown color. And I'm going to go to my diagonal shader tool. And now I'm just going to paint in one sort of one swoop, rather than kind of lifting your brush and putting it down again. Just make sure you make one pass over the complete area. And now if I turn off my shape, I can see I've got this diagonal shadow text. So it's a really kind of, it just adds that depth and feeling and a bit of extra detail to your work, so it can look really nice. So again, we'll just do this quickly on the other layer just to take you through it once more. So we want to duplicate our lettering layer and we're going to fill it with a contrasting color. So I'm going to choose that blue alpha locket and then fill the layer. And now we want to move this just slightly so there's a gap, and we want to select that layer that we've just moved because that's giving us the positioning, and we're going to clear that from our shadow. And then we will select the color that we want to use for the shadow. So I'm going to use that brown, and we want to create a new layer and then go back and select the shadow layer. So open the menu, choose select. This time I'm going to hide that so you can really see what the brush is doing. And oops, I need my brush tool. Make sure you get your brush tool and then make a painted swipe over that area in one go. There you go. Deselect, and you can turn the opacity down to a point that you think it looks good, and there you have it. So that is so much easier than creating another layer and filling in each line and that sort of thing. It's just a really quick, easy way. So if you're interested in downloading the sample, just take a look in the description and there'll be a link for you to get it. Thanks, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you again soon.